She said it while the waiter was still walking away with our menus. "You're the safe option, Ryan. And nobody falls in love with safe forever." I remember exactly what was on the table. 2 waters, no ice for her, extra ice for me. A basket of bread neither of us had touched. Her phone face down next to her fork, which was new. Usually she kept it face up. I didn't say anything right away. I've never been fast with words when it matters. Claire used to tease me about that, back when it was a thing she found charming instead of a thing she was tired of. "Say something," she said. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Anything. React." "How long have you been thinking this?" I said. Not a question, really. More like I was buying time to feel something other than the specific hollow drop in my stomach. "A while." She wasn't looking at me when she said it. She was looking at the candle between us, like it had asked the question instead of me. "It's not. This isn't about you doing anything wrong. That's what makes it worse. You didn't do anything wrong. That's usually a good thing in a relationship." "I know." She almost smiled, and for a second I thought maybe this was going somewhere survivable. "I know how that sounds, but I keep waking up and picturing us in 10 years, and it's the same apartment, the same Sunday, the same everything, and I don't feel scared of that. I should feel scared of that. Comfortable people don't feel scared of that." I looked at the bread. I don't know why. I think I needed somewhere to put my eyes that wasn't her face. "You've had this conversation with yourself already," I said. "Yeah. More than once. Ryan. You practiced it." She didn't deny it. That was the part that actually got me. Not the words, which I'd half expected in some form for weeks without letting myself admit it. It was that she'd rehearsed them. Somewhere, probably in her car, or in the shower, or lying next to me at 2 in the morning while I thought she was asleep. She had said this exact sentence out loud to nobody, until it came out smooth enough to say to me. The waiter came back. Asked if we were ready to order. Claire said we needed another minute in a voice so normal it made my chest hurt. We didn't order. I paid for the bread, tax and tip included, which felt like the most absurd receipt I'd ever signed, $11.40 to end something that had lasted 3 years, and I told her I'd get a ride. I didn't get a ride. I walked 2 miles in October, in a light jacket that wasn't built for how the wind moves through downtown Denver once the sun's down. I passed a guy walking a dog who did that thing where he says evening without really looking at you. I passed the closed-up Thai place we used to order from on Tuesdays. I passed our building's parking garage before I passed our building, and for a second I just stood at the mouth of it, looking at the space where her Civic usually sat, still empty because she'd gone somewhere else after dinner. Probably Priya's. I let myself in around 10. The apartment was quiet in the specific way apartments get when you already know before you check that you're the only one in them. I didn't cry. I want to say that clearly because I think people expect that part, and it didn't happen, not that night. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while with my shoes still on, which Claire hated, and I thought about the way she'd said safe like it was a diagnosis. Then I got up, put my shoes by the door where they belonged, and went to sleep in a bed that already felt too big. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. Nearly a year before that dinner, Claire used to fall asleep during movies she'd picked out herself. It became a running joke. She'd get invested in the first 20 minutes, narrate her theories about where the plot was going, and then somewhere around the 1-hour mark her head would end up on my shoulder and her breathing would change, and that would be it for her. I used to keep watching anyway, half paying attention to the screen, mostly just aware of her weight against my arm. "You let me sleep through the ending again," she'd say the next morning, mildly accusing, like I'd done it on purpose. "You always ask what happened. I always tell you. You never actually watch the ending. I like hearing you tell it better than watching it." That was Claire on a good week. Sharp, a little sarcastic, generous in a way that didn't announce itself. She had this habit of remembering small things, that I liked my coffee slightly too hot, that I hated when people called it Denver-ish weather instead of just saying it might snow, that I got quiet for a day every year around the anniversary of my dad's heart attack, even though I never brought it up first. We had a 2-bedroom on Colfax that we could barely afford together and definitely couldn't have afforded apart, which is its own kind of commitment nobody puts in vows. The 2nd bedroom was technically an office. Mostly it held a treadmill neither of us used and a card table where I kept my sketchbooks. She found the sketchbooks about 4 months in. Not snooping, she was looking for tape. "What is all this?" she said, holding one up. flipping through pages of plazas and transit shelters and a public library redesign I'd drawn just because the current one in our neighborhood had a leaking roof I walked past every day. Nothing. Just stuff I think about. This is really good, Ryan. It's a hobby. It's not a hobby if you fill 6 notebooks with it. She sat down cross-legged on the office floor and went through the whole thing, page by page, asking questions I didn't have practiced answers for because nobody had ever asked them. Why did I curve the walkway instead of running it straight? Why did I always put a bench somewhere people wouldn't expect one? I told her the truth, which was that I liked designing places for people who didn't know they needed somewhere to sit down. She didn't say anything smart back. She just looked at the drawing a while longer, then looked at me and said, "You should show someone this. A real someone. Not just me." I said maybe someday. I meant it the way people mean things they've already decided they're never going to do. I didn't know yet that enough was going to become the exact word that ended us. The rooftop bar was Priya's idea, technically, but it was Claire's coworker Danielle's engagement, which meant it was Claire's world for the night. People in industries with names like brand partnerships and experiential marketing, all of them talking a little too loudly about places they'd just come from or were about to go to. I wore the blazer Claire had picked out for me 2 Christmases ago. I still don't know if that was a good sign or a bad one in hindsight that she had to pick it. "You remember Derek?" she said to a guy named Dev, gesturing at me. Wrong name. She caught it half a second later. "Sorry, Ryan. This is Ryan." "What do you do, Ryan?" "City planning. Public works, technically. Roads, drainage, some park design stuff." Dev nodded in the specific way people nod when they've already decided the conversation is over. Cool. You guys still doing the Cabo thing in March?" he asked Claire, and just like that I wasn't part of the sentence anymore. I got a beer at the bar and stood near the edge of the roof for a while, looking at the skyline, which at least didn't require small talk. I watched Claire across the space, laughing at something, gesturing with her hands the way she did when she was fully alive in a room. She was good at this. Genuinely good, not performing it. People gravitated toward her without her doing anything to earn it beyond existing. I was fine standing alone. I want to say that honestly, it didn't wound me the way it might sound like it should have. What wounded me happened about 40 minutes later, near the drink table, when I overheard her talking to Priya. "He's sweet," she was saying. Not about me, I thought at first, until I heard the next part. Sometimes I look around at a night like this and I think, is this it? Is this the version of exciting I get for the rest of my life? Ryan doesn't even want to be here. You can tell. He's probably thinking about drainage pipes right now. Priya laughed. Not cruelly. Just easily, the way you laugh at something that isn't really about anyone getting hurt, because you don't know anyone's listening. I was thinking about drainage pipes, actually. Specifically a culvert redesign near a flood-prone underpass that had been bothering me for 2 weeks. I didn't find that funny in the moment. I didn't say anything to her about it that night. I got another beer instead, and when she found me later and slid her arm around my waist and asked if I was having an okay time, I said yes. "You sure? You've been quiet." "I'm always quiet at these things." "I know." She said it lightly, but there was something underneath it. Something that sounded almost like disappointment dressed up as acceptance. "I keep hoping one of these nights you'll surprise me." I didn't ask what she meant by that. I think some part of me already knew, and some part of me was afraid that if I asked directly, she'd have to say it directly, and neither of us was ready for that yet. We took an Uber home instead of the 2 of us walking, which we usually did when the weather was decent. She fell asleep against the window instead of against my shoulder. The Big Sur trip had been Claire's idea in the first place. A long weekend in April, a rental car, a list of overlooks she'd bookmarked from some travel account she followed. She'd shown me the itinerary on her phone in bed one night, tracing her finger along the coastline like she could already feel it. She canceled it 6 weeks out. Danielle asked me to help with The Bachelorette instead. Same weekend. I know, the timing's terrible. You could tell her no. I could. She didn't say she would. It's just, this is a whole thing for her, and I already told her I'd think about it. And honestly, a bachelorette in Scottsdale sounds like it'll be more fun than driving 4 hours to look at rocks. No offense to rocks. I told her it was fine. I meant at the time that I understood. Danielle was her closest work friend. Weddings come with obligations, plans get rearranged. All reasonable things. I didn't say any of the other things sitting underneath that, like the fact that this was the 3rd weekend plan in 2 months that had quietly dissolved in favor of something with her friends, or that I'd already requested the days off work and hadn't told her that part because I didn't want it to feel like pressure. I just canceled the rental car. Took maybe 4 minutes online. Ate the $20 cancellation fee without mentioning it. What I did instead was work through most of that weekend on a proposal for a bike corridor extension that wasn't due for another month, because I didn't have anywhere else to put the extra time, and because doing something useful felt better than sitting in the apartment noticing how much quieter it had gotten even when she was technically still living there. She texted from Scottsdale a few times. A picture of a rooftop pool. A voice memo of her and Priya laughing about something I couldn't quite make out. I answered every one of them within a few minutes, short and pleasant, the way you respond to a friend you're happy for. What I didn't do was tell her that I missed her in a way that felt disproportionate to 2 nights apart, or that I'd started noticing a pattern I didn't have a name for yet, or that some part of me had started keeping a quiet, private tally. This dinner canceled, this trip rescheduled, this rooftop conversation I wasn't meant to hear, without deciding what, if anything, I was going to do about it. I never brought any of it up. Not the bachelorette weekend. Not the comment at Danielle's engagement party. Not the growing sense that I was adjusting my life around a version of hers that had less and less room in it for things that weren't already exciting on their own. I told myself that was patience. Claire came home from Scottsdale on a Sunday night, sunburned across her shoulders, in a good mood, full of stories about the bachelorette that she told in more detail than she usually told me anything about her weekends anymore. I listened. I laughed where I was supposed to laugh. I made her tea because her voice was a little hoarse from 3 days of yelling over pool music. She looked at me at one point mid-story and paused just slightly, the kind of pause you don't notice unless you're the person it's aimed at. Like she was checking whether I was actually listening or just being agreeable again. We had the kids' conversation on a Tuesday, which felt like the wrong day for it, though I'm not sure there's a right one. It started because of a Facebook post. Claire's cousin had just had a baby, and Claire scrolled through the photos on the couch next to me, quiet in a way that wasn't really about the baby. "Do you think about it?" she asked. "Kids. Someday. Sometimes. Yeah. What do you picture?" I thought about it honestly instead of answering fast. A house somewhere with a yard. Not huge. I picture teaching a kid to ride a bike in a cul-de-sac. Stuff like that.
À cul-de-sac.
She said it like I'd described a different planet. "What do you picture?" "I don't know. Not that exactly." She pulled her knees up to her chest on the couch, a habit she had when she was working something out in real time instead of reciting something she'd already decided. "I think about, like, before all that. I think about whether I've actually done anything yet. Gone anywhere. Been anyone, outside of just being someone's girlfriend, someone's employee, someone's future mom in a cul-de-sac. You've done things. Have I? Name one thing I've done that wasn't already planned out for me by 25. I didn't have a fast answer, and she noticed that I didn't have a fast answer, and something in her face closed a little. "I'm not trying to attack you," she said. "This isn't about you. It kind of feels like it's about me. It's about me not wanting to just be comfortable." She said it plainly, like she'd landed on the sentence after turning it over for a while and finally found the shape of it. "I don't want comfortable to be the whole story. I want to have done something first. Moved somewhere scary. Failed at something. I don't know. Something that isn't just this. This meaning us. This meaning the version of us where nothing ever changes." I sat with that for a second. Outside, somebody's car alarm went off and stopped almost immediately, the way they do. "I could be scared with you," I said. "If that's the thing. I don't need everything mapped out. I just didn't know you needed the scary part to come from somewhere other than me." She looked at me for a long moment, and there was something almost sad in it, like she wished my answer had been a different one, or like she already suspected it wouldn't be enough no matter what I said. "I know," she said finally. "I know you'd try." She didn't say anything after that. She went back to scrolling through the baby photos, and I sat there next to her, feeling like I just failed a test I hadn't known I was taking, without any idea what the right answer would have even looked like. The name on her phone screen was Jordan, and I only saw it because it lit up while she was in the shower and I was looking for the phone charger, which is a detail I've thought about more than I probably should have, considering how little it should matter now. I didn't read the message. I want to be clear about that. I saw a name I didn't recognize, felt a small, ordinary flicker of curiosity, and put the phone back down exactly where it was. She told me about him herself a few nights later, unprompted, which in hindsight I think was her testing whether it bothered me. "You remember I mentioned Jordan? From Ohio State." "Vaguely." He messaged me. He's out here now, moved for some startup thing, product something, I don't really understand what he does. We're getting coffee Thursday, just to catch up. That's fine, right? Sure, I said, and I meant it mostly. Jordan wasn't the problem. I understood that even then, in some low, quiet way I didn't examine too closely. She came back from that coffee different. Not guilty different. Lit up different, the way she used to look after a good workout or a good idea for a client pitch. He just decided to leave, she said, unpacking her bag on the kitchen counter like the story needed props. One day he just said, I'm not doing this anymore, and he sold half his stuff and moved to a city where he knew nobody, because he wanted to see if he could build something from scratch. That's insane, right? That's completely insane. Sounds like it worked out for him. That's not the point. The point is he just did it. He didn't wait for the perfect moment or run it past a committee first. He just decided, and then he was scared and did it anyway. I understood, even as she said it, that she wasn't really talking about Jordan. I want to say I confronted that understanding directly. I didn't. I made a joke about startup guys always having the same haircut, and she laughed, and the conversation moved somewhere else, and I let myself believe the moment had passed instead of noticing that it had landed somewhere and stayed. What I didn't see, what I only understood putting it together much later, was that Claire started, from that week on, having a version of a conversation with herself that she hadn't let herself have before. I don't know exactly what she said to herself in her car, or in the shower, or lying next to me those last few weeks pretending to already be asleep. But something in her had crossed a line it couldn't fully walk back from. Some quiet permission she'd given herself that a life could just be different if you were brave enough to make it different. And once she'd let herself think that clearly, she couldn't stop thinking it. She started being nicer to me around then, is the strange part. Softer, more present in small ways, an extra squeeze of my hand, a text in the middle of the day for no reason. I told myself things were getting better. I didn't understand yet that people are sometimes kindest to you right before they leave. I've replayed the dinner enough times now that I think I finally have the whole thing, not just the part one let myself remember at first. She picked the restaurant, which wasn't unusual, except she picked somewhere we didn't normally go. Not our usual Italian place on Colfax, but a quieter spot near Cherry Creek that neither of us had a history with. I think now that mattered to her. I think she didn't want to ruin somewhere we already had memories. She was quiet in the car on the way over. I asked if everything was okay and she said yes, and I believed her because I'd been believing her for weeks by then. Neither of us opened a menu. She asked for water before the waiter had even finished setting down the glasses, which she never usually did. She always ordered a drink first, out of habit, even on a normal Tuesday. I need to say something, she said, and I need you to let me get through it before you respond. Because if you respond too fast, I'm gonna lose my nerve. Okay. She turned her glass a quarter turn on the table, not drinking from it, just turning it. I love you. I want to say that first because it's true, and I don't want what I say next to make you think it isn't. I didn't say anything. I'd learned, by then, that silence was the only thing I had that she couldn't argue with. You're the safe option, she said, and nobody falls in love with safe forever. The waiter came by right then to ask about the bread, and she waved him off without looking at him, and I remember being strangely grateful for the interruption, like it gave the sentence somewhere to land before it kept going. I've been trying to figure out for months if this is fair to say to you, because it's not your fault, she said. You didn't do anything wrong. That's the part that's been eating me alive. If you cheated, or if you were mean to me, or if we fought all the time, I could point at something. But you're good to me. You've always been good to me. And I still lie awake some nights feeling like I'm disappearing into a life I didn't choose. I just sort of arrived at. You could have told me that sooner. I've been telling you for months, in pieces. You just kept adjusting instead of asking me what was actually going on. That landed, and it landed because it was true, and I hated that it was true. So what happens now? I said. I think I need to not be in this anymore. I think I need to go find out if I even know how to be someone without a plan already laid out for me. And I can't do that here with you because you make it too easy to just stay. That's supposed to be a good thing. Staying. It is a good thing, she said. And her voice finally cracked, just slightly, the only real crack in the whole conversation. That's what's killing me. It is a good thing, and I'm still leaving. I asked her once if there was someone else. She said no immediately, without hesitation, and I believed her, because if there had been someone else, I think some smaller, meaner part of me could have made peace with this faster. There wasn't a villain in the story. There was just a woman who'd looked at a comfortable life and found herself unable to want it. And a man who didn't know how to be anything other than exactly what he was. We didn't order dinner. I paid for the bread neither of us had touched, same as always, and told her I'd get a ride home. I never called one. I walked the same 2 miles I'd end up replaying more times than I could count, past the same parking garage, past the same closed-up Thai place, in a jacket that still wasn't warm enough for how the wind moves through downtown Denver once the sun goes down. She moved her stuff out over 2 weekends, which felt worse than if she'd done it all at once. The first weekend took the big things, her side of the closet, the desk from the office, the espresso machine that had technically always been hers. The second weekend was the smaller stuff, the stuff that takes longer to notice is gone. A specific mug, a phone charger she'd bought because mine was always dying, a jacket that had somehow ended up in my closet instead of hers for over a year. I helped carry boxes down to her car both weekends because it seemed strange not to, and because some stubborn, undignified part of me still wanted her to see me being decent about this, as if that might change anything. "You don't have to help," she said the second weekend, holding a box against her hip. "I know. You're allowed to be angry at me, Ryan. You don't have to be like this." "Like what?" "Fine. Understanding. Whatever this is." I took the box from her and carried it down myself instead of answering that. The lease had 11 months left on it. We split the difference. She paid through the end of the month, I took over from there, and I spent an evening at the kitchen table doing math I didn't need a calculator for, just so my hands had something to do besides sit still. Marcus came by that first week with a 6-pack and absolutely no interest in talking about feelings, which turned out to be exactly what I needed. "You eating?" he asked, dropping onto my couch like he lived there. "I'm eating." "Real food? Or the sad kind of eating where it's cereal for dinner 3 nights running?" "It's been cereal twice." "Twice this week or twice total? Does it matter?" He handed me a beer and didn't push it further, which I appreciated more than I told him at the time. We watched a game neither of us cared much about, and somewhere around the third quarter he said without looking at me, "For what it's worth, I never got what she was looking for that she thought she wasn't getting. But I also wasn't in it, so what do I know?" "Yeah. You gonna be okay?" "Eventually. Probably." That was the extent of it. No speeches. No advice I hadn't already given myself at 3 in the morning. Staring at the ceiling in a bed that still smelled faintly like her shampoo for longer than I wanted to admit out loud. The apartment kept surprising me for weeks after that. A coffee mug in the back of a cabinet that had somehow been missed. A hoodie of hers still hanging on the hook behind the bathroom door. A grocery list in her handwriting stuck to the fridge with a magnet. Half the items crossed off in a version of our life that didn't exist anymore. I didn't throw any of it away right away. I just left it where it was, the way you leave a bruise alone instead of pressing on it, and I went back to work the following Monday like nothing had happened, because that was the only version of moving forward I actually knew how to do. Denise Ford caught me sketching during lunch about 6 weeks after Claire moved out, at a corner table in the break room where I usually ate alone with my headphones in. She was my supervisor, technically, though she ran the planning department more like someone who'd forgotten she was supposed to act like a boss. She dropped into the chair across from me without asking, which she did sometimes, and glanced at the notebook before I could close it. "That the underpass by 6th? She asked. "Yeah. There's a culvert issue there I've been thinking about on my own time." "On your own time?" She said it like she found that funny. "You always draw like this?" "Since I was a kid." She flipped it around to look properly, turning a few pages back without asking permission, which I let happen because something in her face had gone from casual to actually paying attention. She stopped on a page with a redesign of a vacant lot 2 blocks from my apartment. I'd sketched a small plaza there months earlier, back before Claire left, mostly to kill an evening. "You know the city's got a neighborhood revitalization fund," she said. "Micro grants. Small stuff, 5 to 15,000 community-facing design projects. Somebody from my old department at Metro State runs the review panel. Deadline's coming up." "I've heard of it. Have you applied?" "No." "Why not?" I didn't have a good answer, so I gave her the honest one instead. "I don't know. Never seemed like the kind of thing people like me actually win." She looked at me for a second the way people do when they're deciding whether to say something a little pointed. "People like you," she repeated. "You mean people who are good at the actual work instead of talking about the work?" I didn't say anything to that. "Send me the application link tonight if you find it," she said, standing up, sliding the notebook back across the table. I want to see what you do with an actual budget instead of a napkin. I didn't send it that night. I meant to, and then I didn't, mostly because some part of me still expected to fail at this the way Claire's voice in my head had already decided I would. Quietly, politely, without any drama, the same way I'd failed at being exciting enough to keep her. Marcus noticed the notebook a few days later when he came by to return a drill he'd borrowed. Denise mentioned some grant thing, he said. Said you were sitting on an application. I haven't done it yet. Why not? I don't know. Feels like a lot for a lot near my apartment. He shrugged, not pushing it, which was his way. You still walk past that lot every day? Yeah. And you still think about what you do with it? Sometimes. Then I don't know what you're waiting for. He set the drill on the counter and let himself back out, and I sat there afterward with the laptop open to a blank application I still hadn't started, feeling the particular kind of stuck that comes from being more afraid of trying than of staying exactly where you are. I opened the notebook again that night instead of closing it. I looked at the sketch of the lot for a long time, the bench nobody had asked for, the curved path, the small covered area I'd drawn without really knowing why until now. I didn't submit anything that week, but I started, for the first time in longer than I wanted to admit, actually working on it instead of just thinking about working on it. I missed the first deadline. Not by much, 4 days, but enough that when I finally emailed the review coordinator to ask if there was any flexibility, the response came back polite and final. Submissions closed. Next cycle opens in a few months. I told Denise before she could ask. I missed it. How? I don't know. I kept rewriting the proposal instead of sending it. She didn't say anything encouraging. She just looked mildly disappointed in a way that somehow landed harder than if she'd been angry. That's a shame, she said, and went back to her office. And I sat at my desk feeling like I'd confirmed something about myself I'd been trying not to confirm. I almost let it go there. I want to be honest about that. There was a version of that week where I put the notebook in a drawer and told myself the timing had never been right anyway, that some people just aren't built for this kind of thing, that Claire had probably been onto something true about me after all. My mother called that Thursday the way she did most Thursdays, mostly to talk about nothing in particular. A neighbor's dog, a recipe she'd seen, whether I was eating enough vegetables. You sound off, she said partway through the call. I'm fine. Ryan. I told her about the grant. Not dramatically. I don't think I know how to tell a story dramatically even to my own mother. Just the facts of it, missing the deadline, the small stupid embarrassment of it. So apply next time, she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I already missed it once. Feels like proof I'm not really the kind of person who follows through on this stuff. She was quiet for a second on the other end, and I could hear her moving something in her kitchen, a cabinet door, the specific clink of a mug being set down. Your father missed the sergeant's exam the first time he took it, she said. Failed it, actually. Not missed, failed. You know that? I didn't know that. He didn't like people knowing. But he took it again 8 months later and passed. And by the time he retired, he'd trained half the department. A pause. Missing something once isn't the same as being someone who misses things. I didn't say much after that. I told her I loved her, and I let her go back to her evening, and I sat in my apartment for a while afterward with the notebook open on the counter, looking at that same sketch of the lot. The next application window was 5 months out. Instead of putting the notebook away, I kept working on the proposal anyway, refining it without a deadline pushing me, because for the first time it didn't feel like something I was doing to prove Claire wrong. It felt like something I wanted to finish regardless of who was watching. The panel interview happened on a Tuesday in a conference room at the downtown library branch. 3 people behind a folding table who all looked slightly bored until I set my boards down. I'd redone the presentation 4 times in the 2 weeks leading up to it. Denise had looked over an early draft and told me, flatly, that I was over-explaining things nobody needed explained and under-explaining the one thing that actually mattered. Why the specific lot? Why now? Why me? Tell them why you walk past it every day, she'd said. Not the technical stuff. That part. So I did. This lot's been empty for 6 years, I told the panel, sliding the first board forward. It's 2 blocks from my apartment. I walk past it most mornings on my way to the bus, and most evenings on my way back. And for a long time I didn't think about it much beyond noticing the weeds got taller. I paused, not because I'd rehearsed the pause, but because I actually needed it. About a year ago, I started drawing what it could look like instead. Not because anyone asked me to, just because I walk past a lot of nothing in this city and I got tired of not doing anything about it. One of the panelists, an older woman with reading glasses pushed up into gray hair, leaned forward slightly. Walk us through the design. I did. A curved path instead of a straight one, because straight paths make people move through a space instead of stay in it. A small covered structure, nothing fancy, just enough shelter that somebody waiting for a bus in the rain had somewhere to stand. Native plantings instead of grass that would need constant watering. A single bench positioned to catch the morning sun, angled toward the mountains instead of the street, because I'd noticed on all those walks that almost nobody who lived in that neighborhood had anywhere close by to just sit and look at them. You did the drainage calculations yourself? One of the men asked, flipping through my supporting pages. That's actually my day job, public works. I wanted to make sure the plan didn't create runoff problems for the building next door. I didn't feel brilliant walking out of that room. I felt like I'd said the truest version of something I usually kept to myself, out loud, to strangers without immediately regretting it. That was new. Not the confidence people talk about in inspirational contexts. Nothing shifted overnight, nothing announced itself. It was smaller than that. It was just the fact that I'd stood in a room and let people see something I cared about, without deciding in advance that it wouldn't matter. Denise asked how it went when I got back to the office. I don't know, I told her honestly. I said what I actually think for once instead of what I thought they wanted to hear. That's usually the one that works, she said, and went back to her desk. The email came on a Thursday morning, subject line so plain I almost skipped past it in my inbox. Neighborhood microgrant, decision notification. I read it twice before it landed. They'd approved the proposal. $12,000, folded into a partnership with the city's parks department, construction to begin in the spring with public works. My own department, providing engineering oversight, which meant I'd essentially be working alongside my regular job instead of leaving it. I didn't call anyone right away. I sat at my desk for a minute just looking at the screen, feeling something that didn't have an obvious name. Not triumph, nothing that dramatic. Something quieter. Something closer to relief. I told Denise first, in person, because her office was 20 feet from my desk. They approved it, I said. She looked up from her monitor, and for a second her expression didn't change at all, which almost worried me, until it broke into something genuinely pleased. Of course they did, she said, like there'd never been any real doubt, which wasn't true, but I appreciated the version of the story where she said it was. Marcus took me out for a beer that Friday to market, though market mostly meant sitting at the same dive bar we always went to, him needling me about finally doing something with all those notebooks. Told you, he said. You didn't tell me anything. You handed me back a drill. I told you with the drill. Subtext. He grinned, clinking his glass against mine. So what happens now? You just start building a park. Not exactly. It's small. A lot. Some plantings. A covered bench area. It'll take a few months, and I'm still doing my regular job the whole time. It's not. I want to be clear, it's not some huge thing. 12 grand and your name on the design credit isn't nothing, man. It wasn't nothing. I let myself feel that, sitting there, without immediately shrinking it down the way I usually did with anything good that happened to me. I called my mother that weekend and told her properly the whole story, not just the flat facts I'd given Marcus. I knew you'd get there, she said, and I could hear, even over the phone, that she meant it, that she wasn't just saying something comforting. I missed the first deadline, I reminded her. I know, and you tried again anyway. That's the part that matters, Ryan. Nobody remembers the deadline you missed. They remember what you built after. I didn't think about Claire much that weekend, which was its own small, strange marker of something shifting. I thought about drainage angles and plant hardiness zones and whether the bench should face slightly more east than I'd originally drawn it. For the first time since October, I fell asleep without replaying a restaurant table in my head. The lot took longer than anyone expected, which apparently is just how construction works, according to everyone who'd done it before and never bothered mentioning it to me sooner. Months into construction, the covered bench area was framed but not finished, and a permitting issue with the drainage tie-in pushed the timeline back 6 weeks. I spent 2 evenings redrawing a section I'd already drawn twice, sitting at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee I kept forgetting to microwave, and there was a night in there somewhere where I genuinely wondered if I'd oversold what this project could be. Denise talked me down from that the way she talked me down from most things, which was by not really engaging with the panic at all. Every project has a bad 6 weeks, she said. This is yours. Keep going. I kept going. By the time the plaza was mostly done, the curved path poured, the native plantings in, the bench angled toward the mountains exactly the way I'd drawn it a year earlier without knowing if anyone would ever actually sit on it. Somebody did the first week it opened. An older man with a cane, sitting there in the late afternoon with his eyes closed, facing west. I watched him from across the street for a minute longer than I probably needed to, feeling something settle in my chest that I didn't have an efficient word for. Word got around city departments the way it does. Not fast, not dramatic, just steadily. A nonprofit that ran affordable housing development in the same neighborhood reached out to Denise about partnering on something bigger. A small community center on an adjacent parcel the city had been sitting on for years, funded partly through city money and partly through a private philanthropic push, with my plaza design cited as the reason they trusted the department to actually deliver something that felt considered instead of just functional. They want you leading design on it? Denise told me, in the same flat tone she used for everything, like she was reading me a weather report instead of the biggest professional sentence anyone had said to me in years. I didn't call anyone right away. I sat with it for a day before I told Marcus, and even then I undersold it out of habit, the way I still tended to undersell most things that mattered. Somewhere in the middle of all that, in a week I don't remember clearly beyond the fact that it happened, Claire liked a photo I'd posted of the finished plaza. Just a small red heart under a picture of a bench nobody had asked for. No comment, nothing else. I noticed it the way you notice a car alarm 2 blocks away, clearly, but from a distance that didn't require me to do anything about it. I didn't message her back. I didn't unlike it in my head or make it mean something bigger than it was. I just noticed it the way I noticed most things about her by then, and then I put my phone down and went back to a drainage calculation for the community center site that actually needed my attention. I thought briefly about the version of me from the year before, the one who would have read something into that heart for 3 days straight. I didn't feel anything close to that anymore. I felt mostly like someone looking at an old photograph of a stranger. The invitation came from the nonprofit, not from me, though my name was printed on the seating chart in a font slightly larger than the rest. Ryan Qley, lead design, City of Denver Public Works, Table 4, which I only found out because Denise forwarded me the event program a week early and told me to buy a suit that actually fit. The auction gala was held at a renovated warehouse space downtown that the philanthropic host used for events like this, string lights and exposed brick, with the live auction and the honoree tables set off in a roped section at the back of the room, ticketed separately from the general reception, all of it in service of raising the second phase of funding for the community center. I stood near the edge of the room for the first 20 minutes doing exactly what I'd done at Danielle's engagement party almost a year earlier, except this time nobody had to introduce me to anyone. A few people introduced themselves to me. "You're the plaza guy," a woman said, shaking my hand near the bar. "I drive past that bench every morning. My kid asked me once why somebody would put a bench there specifically, facing that direction, and I didn't have an answer, so I made one up. Turns out I was basically right. I told her the real reason. She said the made-up one was better. We both laughed, and it was easy, the kind of easy I hadn't expected to feel in a room like this. I saw Claire before she saw me. She was near the check-in table with a man in a gray suit I didn't recognize, gesturing at something on a clipboard the way she used to gesture at client emails at our old kitchen table. She looked good. Not different exactly, just herself in a room she clearly knew how to move through. I found out later, from Denise, that Claire's hospitality group had a client sponsoring one of the lower-tier tables, and that Claire had come as a +1 for the account, working the room the way her job required her to work rooms. She spotted the seating chart near the entrance before she spotted me. I watched it happen from across the room, watched her scan down the list of tables the way people do when they're just checking logistics, watched her stop on a line and go still in a way that had nothing casual left in it. She looked up, found me near the bar. I didn't look away, and neither did she, and for a few seconds neither of us moved, the room continuing around us like nothing had happened, waiters passing with trays, someone laughing too loudly near the auction table. She said something to the man in the gray suit. He nodded, glanced toward the coat check, and drifted off toward another conversation. Claire walked toward the rope line that separated the general reception from the auction itself and the head tables reserved for donors and honorees, and stopped just short of it, the way you stop at a door you know isn't yours to walk through. "Ryan," she said. Hey, I saw your name on the chart. Table 4. She said it carefully, like she was still deciding whether to believe it. Lead design. Yeah. This is the lot. The one by your old apartment. The one you used to draw. Same one. It grew a little. She almost laughed, though nothing about her face looked like laughing. A little, she repeated. Neither of us said anything for a second. A staff member near the rope line glanced over, polite but clearly aware that Claire's badge color didn't clear her past that point, and I saw her notice it too. Saw the exact moment she registered that she was standing at a boundary she couldn't cross into a room that, a year ago, she hadn't known existed inside me at all. Do you have a minute? She asked. Or is that? She gestured vaguely toward the honoree tables, toward the rest of the evening waiting for me somewhere behind her. I've got a minute. We ended up near the coat check, out of the main flow of the room, which felt right. Somehow, not a stage, not a scene, just a quiet corner where two people who used to know each other completely could stand and be slightly awkward together. I don't really know what to say, she said. I've thought about what I'd say if this ever happened. I didn't think it actually would. What did you think you'd say? She looked at me for a second, weighing something. I thought I'd want to explain myself, justify it, maybe, but standing here, I don't think I actually need to do that. I think you already understand it better than I do. A small, uneven breath. I heard about the plaza a while back. From Priya, actually, who heard it from someone at Danielle's old job. I didn't reach out because I didn't think I had the right to. You could have. I know. I liked one of your photos instead, which is its own kind of coward's move, probably. I didn't correct her on that. I didn't agree with it either. I let it sit there, the way I'd learned to let things sit instead of rushing to fill silence with something reassuring. How are you? I asked, and I meant it plainly, without an edge underneath it. Honestly, I don't know yet. I did the things I said I wanted to do. Moved to Seattle for almost a year for a job that didn't work out the way I pictured. Came back. I'm not unhappy. I'm just still figuring out what any of it actually got me. She looked past me, briefly, toward the tables. You look like you know what it got you. I don't know if I'd say that. I know what I built. I'm not sure I know what it means yet either. She almost smiled at that, something a little sad in it. You always did that. Undersold things. Guess some parts didn't change. No, she said. I don't think they did. I think I just finally see them differently. She looked at me for a moment longer, something working behind her expression that looked almost like an apology trying to find its shape. I'm sorry, Ryan, for the way I said it. Not that I left, I think I needed to, but the way I said it. You didn't deserve that specific version of it. I thought about the $11.40, the walk home in October, the 8 months of feeling like a diagnosis instead of a person. I found somewhere in there that I didn't need her to apologize for me to be okay. The apology landed the way rain lands on a window you're not standing behind anymore, visible but not something that could reach me. I appreciate you saying that, I told her, and meant it. I don't think I need it, though. Not anymore. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer and had made a kind of peace with it before she'd even walked over. I should let you get back, she said. Yeah. It was good seeing this. The room, you in it. Take care of yourself, Claire. You too, Ryan. She turned and walked back toward the rope line, back toward the man in the gray suit, back into the part of the evening that belonged to her, and I stood there a moment longer before turning the other way, toward table 4, feeling lighter in a way I hadn't expected walking into the building 3 hours earlier. Denise found me a few minutes later, holding 2 glasses of something sparkling, handing one over without asking if I wanted it. You good? She asked, following my gaze briefly toward the other side of the room, where Claire had already disappeared into a cluster of people near the auction table. Yeah, I'm good. She didn't push it, which was the thing I appreciated most about her. She raised her glass slightly, said something dry about the silent auction prices being criminal, and drifted off toward a donor she needed to thank. I sat down at table 4 a while later, during a lull in the program, half listening to the nonprofit director thank a list of sponsors that didn't include my name and didn't need to. Someone had left a cocktail napkin folded under my water glass, and I found myself, almost without deciding to, pulling a pen out of my jacket pocket and sketching on it. Not the community center, not anything official, just a shape, a small curved path through an imagined space, a bench positioned somewhere it hadn't been asked to go. I didn't think about Claire while I drew it. I noticed that, actually, a few minutes in, noticed the absence of her the way you notice a room's gone quiet after a noise finally stops. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing announced itself. I was just a man at a table, sketching something that didn't exist yet, in a room full of people who believed in a project he'd started because he'd gotten tired of walking past empty space and not doing anything about it. Marcus texted around then, a photo of the game he had muted on his couch. Captioned, "This is my whole night, at least yours came with free champagne." I laughed, sitting there by myself, and texted back something about how his night sounded easier than mine, which wasn't entirely true, but felt like the kind of thing you say to a friend on a good night. The program wrapped a while later. People started drifting toward the doors, coats coming off hooks, cars being called. I folded the napkin once, put it in my jacket pocket next to my phone, and walked out into a Denver evening that had gone cold the way October evenings do, the kind of cold that used to mean something different to me. I didn't think about the walk home a year earlier. Not really. Came to mind for half a second, the way old things do, and then it passed, the way most things eventually do if you let them. I drove home instead of walking. Let myself into an apartment that had long since stopped feeling like somewhere someone used to live, and stopped feeling mostly like anything except mine. I put the napkin on the kitchen counter next to my keys, where I'd find it again in the morning, probably do something with it eventually, the way I usually did. Then I turned off the light and went to bed, without replaying anything, without waiting for anything else to happen. Just a man who'd built something real out of a version of himself nobody had thought to call safe in a long time.